Operation Mountain Fury was a NATO-led operation begun on September 16, 2006 as a follow-up operation to Operation Medusa, to clear Taliban rebels from the eastern provinces of Afghanistan. Another focus of the operation was to enable reconstruction projects such as schools, healthcare facilities, and courthouses to take place in the targeted provinces. During the operation, the Taliban suffered large losses during direct battle with NATO coalition forces. As a result, Jones and Canadian Defence Minister Gordon O'Connor. Jones also linked the large-scale production of opium to increased insurgent violence. The Canadians continue fighting in Panjwai. The Canadian forces began reconstruction efforts after major combat operations of Operation Medusa had ceased, but they still encountered fierce fighting. Canadian forces began the construction of a road, codenamed Summit, from the Panjwai area to outlying areas including Kandahar city. But the Taliban continued to attack them both in Panjwai and in Kandahar city with ambushes, IED attacks or suicide bombings, taking the lives of Canadian soldiers along with some Americans. The Canadian involvement in Operation Mountain Fury was stepped up when they mounted an operation of their own called Operation Falcon Summit on December 15, 2006. During Falcon Summit, the Canadians gained control of several key villages and towns that were former Taliban havens, such as Hauzi Madad. During the first week of the operation, massive Canadian artillery and tank barrages were carried out in a successful attempt to clear pockets of Taliban resistance. The Americans go on the offensive. Meanwhile, the Americans began their combat operations against the Taliban forces that were entrenched in the mountains on the border with Pakistan in the east, in the provinces of Paktika, Khost, Ghazni, Paksha, Logar and Nuristan. The 10th Mountain Division led the charge, establishing many remote outposts in regions that were previously Taliban-dominated. These outposts came almost under continued attacks, as well as did the American combat patrols, which resulted in almost 150 casualties inflicted on the Americans in 2.5 months. By the beginning of December, the British attack repelled. On December 5, 2006, the British Marines attacked a Taliban-held valley in southern Afghanistan near Gamzir, but withdrew after a ferocious counterattack that withstood airstrikes and artillery fire. Scores of soldiers ran across a bridge over the Helmand River under a full moon shortly before daybreak and began sweeping south through wheat fields. In the south of the province, the opium center of the world's major producer, Marines initially faced only sporadic resistance, but when they advanced, Taliban fighters launched a ferocious, organized riposte with heavy weapons and tried to outflank the British troops. The Taliban withstood barrages of airstrikes from R-64 Apache helicopters, 500-pound bombs dropped by B-1 bombers and withering cannon fire from A-10 ground attack jets before the British finally withdrew after a 10-hour battle. The Taliban fighters, who say they have the expertise to defeat the strongest army, had dug sophisticated networks of trenches, often leading from compound to compound. The assault was the latest in a series of battles by British forces around the bridgehead and the short road at the north end of the valley, crisscrossed by networks of ancient canals that make Helmand fertile enough to produce a third of the world's opium crop. The British said they considered the assault a success as they had cleared out areas near the DC, a tiny strip of road and ruined buildings on the eastern side of the Helmand River. But without more Afghan troops to hold the ground, there was little hope of doing much more. Mullah Osmani killed. On December 19, 2006, a NATO airstrike targeting a car in a deserted area of Helmand province killed Mullah Akhtar Mohammad Osmani along with 2 other men. He was the top Taliban commander for all of their operations in southern Afghanistan. The British attack again. The next month, an operation called Operation Clay was launched on New Year's Day. Plymouth-based 42 Commando were engaged in 4 days of fighting. The British had running firefights for up to 4 days against fairly coherent sustained attacks of small arms, rockets and indirect fire. About 110 Royal Marines carried out the operation in northern Helmand. During the operation, British troops destroyed a Taliban training camp and killed dozens of insurgents, according to the military. From the 13th to the 15th of January, 2007, Royal Marines fought Taliban forces in the south of Helmand, attacking their positions and a major base. During the fighting, 1 Royal Marine was killed and several were wounded. The Taliban suffered at least 30 killed. Timeline of events: September 18, 19 people, including 4 Canadian soldiers, were killed by a suicide bomber in the Panjwai district, Kandahar province, in Kabul. 4 Afghan police and 11 civilians were killed in 2 suicide bomb explosions. September 19. 11 Taliban and 8 additional militants were killed in offensive operations in Helmand province. 4 al-Qaeda operatives were arrested in Kabul. September 20, 34 Taliban fighters, and up to 10 other insurgents were killed in various conflicts, as well as 1 Afghan policeman and an Italian soldier serving in ISAF. September 21, 4 more Taliban were killed as they attempted to destroy an oil tanker, and 5 were detained by U.S. forces, including a regional commander. 1 Italian soldier died in a vehicle accident in Kabul. September 23, 19 laborers are killed on a bus in Kandahar province. 25 Taliban die in battle with police in Uruzgan province. 10 Taliban killed near Helmand province. September 24, Afghan and coalition forces killed 63 Taliban in 3 separate engagements and captured 21 others in a separate operation. September 25, 10 Taliban were killed by coalition forces in Paktika, while 2 suicide bombers wounded 1 American soldier and separately 2 Afghan police were killed in a Taliban attack. September 26, a Taliban suicide bomber killed 9 Afghan soldiers, while elsewhere 8 Taliban died in explosions and 1 Italian soldier died. 2 Taliban were arrested in connection with the suicide bombing. September 27, another suicide bomber hit just outside a Canadian base, wounding a civilian. And in other operations, 31 Taliban were killed and 20 were captured. September 29, 2 Taliban and an Afghan police officer were killed in a clash, and elsewhere a Canadian soldier was killed in an explosion. September 30, a suicide bomber killed a dozen Afghan civilians. October 2, the Taliban attacked a police station and started a gun battle in Paktika that killed 3 police and 10 Taliban. October 4 to 6, 2 suicide bombers killed numerous civilians and a police officer. October 6, coalition troops arrested a suicide bomber. A Canadian soldier was killed in an explosion on Ambush Alley in the Battle of Panjwai. October 7, a suicide bomber attacked a NATO base, causing no damage. Elsewhere on the same day, the Taliban attacked a patrol, killing 1 Canadian soldier, and in Pakistan 48 suspected Taliban were captured. Meanwhile, an offensive by American and Afghan troops killed 30 Taliban. October 8, 24 Taliban and 1 Afghan soldier were killed. 2 rebels were also arrested. On Monday the 9th, 16 more Taliban and an Afghan soldier were killed. October 12, 2 Taliban suicide bombers hit 2 patrols, wounding bystanders. Also on Thursday, 20 Taliban were killed in fighting with Afghan and coalition forces. October 13, a Taliban suicide bomber hit a NATO patrol, killing 1 soldier and 8 civilians. Later in the day, Afghan police repelled a Taliban attack, killing 3 Taliban. October 14, 8 Afghan policemen and 4 Taliban fighters were killed and 9 Taliban were taken prisoner. Overnight, a battle between Taliban and Afghan police left 3 Afghan police and at least 1 Taliban fighter dead. 2 Canadian soldiers were killed in combat in Kandahar and 2 were wounded in the Battle of Panjwai. October 15, coalition forces captured 3 Taliban and killed 4, disrupting a bombing cell. October 16, 2 Taliban suicide bombers killed 4 Afghan civilians. That same day, 3 more insurgents were killed. October 17, in an airstrike, NATO forces killed 24 Taliban including a man they designated as a mid-level commander. 24 other Taliban were also killed and another 8 more arrested in another incident. October 18, ISAF and Afghan forces killed 32 Taliban after an ambush. October 19, 2 Taliban suicide bombers hit, one in Lashkargah, and the other in Khost. The first killed 2 children and the second killed an Afghan police officer. 5 Taliban were killed by a NATO airstrike in an encampment in the Gyan district of Paktika province, Anna fired E-30 near the Pakistan border. The first indirect field artillery fires in history of Anna. October 20, a Taliban suicide bomber killed 1 Afghan soldier and ISAF forces killed 1 Taliban and captured 4. October 22, 15 insurgents were killed after they ambushed an ISAF patrol. Anna conducted first counterfire field artillery fires near Pakistan border which resulted in 10 casualties. October 23, 15 Taliban were captured trying to enter Kabul with explosives. October 25, 48 Taliban were killed by NATO strikes at 3 separate groups gathering near Kandahar. October 28, up to 70 Taliban were killed when they attacked a military patrol north of Taran Kowt in Uruzgan province. The battle killed 1 ISAF soldier. October 30, 55 Taliban insurgents were killed and 20 injured, and 1 NATO soldier was killed in a 6-hour battle between Taliban insurgents and elements of Charlie Company 1st Battalion, 4th Infantry Regiment in the Dakopan district of Zabul province. Also 3 NATO soldiers were wounded as Taliban fighters attacked their convoy in eastern Afghanistan. October 31, 12 Taliban fighters were killed in an engagement with NATO forces, killing 1 soldier after a roadside bomb killed 3 NATO troops and a suicide bomber killed an Afghan police officer. Also 2 NATO soldiers were wounded in a suicide bombing in Ghazni province. November 1, 3 militants were killed and 1 captured by US and Afghan troops in the Khost province. A suicide bomber wounded 2 NATO soldiers in Kandahar. November 3, 6 Afghan police officers were killed in an ambush by Taliban rebels. November 4, 7 Taliban are killed in a NATO airstrike. November 6, at least 2 insurgents are killed by coalition forces and 6 others are detained, including an al-Qaeda operative, while 1 NATO and 2 Afghan soldiers are killed. November 8, 28 militants are killed in 2 separate engagements. 3 Afghan police are killed in an ambush and 3 militants are captured by coalition troops. November 9, clashes continue, 6 more Taliban killed. November 10, NATO forces kill 12 Taliban insurgents. November 11, NATO forces bomb a compound in the Burmal district of eastern Afghanistan, killing at least 20 Taliban fighters. November 12, NATO forces capture 6 Taliban rebels including an Arab and a Pakistani. November 16, 2 civilians are accidentally killed by British troops. 6 militants die elsewhere. November 23, a mortar attack on a patrol kills 1 NATO soldier and wounds 1. November 25, 55 insurgents are killed by Afghan troops. 1 soldier is killed. November 27, a suicide bomber kills 2 NATO soldiers in Kandahar province. November 28, 2 suicide bombers kill 1 policeman and wound another policeman and 1 NATO soldier in Herat and Kandahar provinces. 2 NATO soldiers are killed and 1 is wounded when the patrol hits a roadside bomb near Kabul. November 29, 6 insurgents are killed in Kandahar province during an Afghan raid. December 1, 16 Taliban are killed and 9 are captured, including 2 top commanders. December 3, a suicide bomber wounded 3 NATO soldiers and killed 3 civilians in Kandahar. The soldiers responded to the attacks that resulted in the deaths of 5 civilians. December 4, at least 7 Taliban are killed in clashes with NATO. December 5, 4 more militants are shot dead. 2 NATO soldiers are wounded in Kandahar by a suicide bomber. A British attack on a Taliban-held valley results in the death of 1 soldier and wounding of another. The attack is repelled and British forces fail to complete their objectives. December 6, Taliban shoot dead 5 civilians, while clashes in southern Afghanistan kill 5 of their members. December 11, NATO airstrikes kill 9 insurgents while Afghan troops kill 3 more. January 11, 2007, up to 150 Taliban are killed in battles with NATO forces. January 13, 2007, 30 Taliban and 1 British soldier are killed in a NATO operation. January 15, 2007, operation formally declared over.